Hi, everybody. Larry Keane, Senior Vice President for Government and Public Affairs at the National Shooting Sports Foundation. And I'm pleased to have with me a good friend of mine, Fred Ferguson from Vista Outdoors. Fred, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's been a good show.
I was just going to say, how's the show going for you?
The show is busy. You know, Vista Outdoor, we've got a lot of brands represented here. You know, our flagship brand, Federal Ammo, they've unveiled a lot of new products. The same is true for CCI, Bushnell, Blackhawk, Eagle, right on down the list. So we're excited.
Why don't you tell the audience what your role is at Vista Outdoor?
Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications. So in my role, I manage federal and state lobbying, corporate communications, and corporate social responsibility. So it's a loaded portfolio, but in this day and age, it's an interconnected portfolio. Because if you do any one of those things in a silo, you're leaving a lot on the table.
Right. So you and I work together, and with our team in D.C. and at the state level, but we've had some really good success recently on a bill that we've been working on for a very long time.
Yep.
The Target Practice Training, the Target Practice Marksmanship Training and Support Act, or as we like to call it, the Range Bill, because it's a lot easier to say.
Yep.
Which we finally got passed recently. Can you tell the audience what the bill's all about?
Yeah, so dating back to the 30s, the firearms and ammunition industry has been paying into the Federal Wildlife Conservation Fund. That fund was created so that we can conserve and enhance our hunting heritage for this generation, the next generation, and beyond. Over the last 5 years, for example, Vista Outdoor has contributed $400 million to that conservation fund, and that's money that goes directly into the hands of wildlife officials for habitat and wildlife management and improvement. What the Range Bill does is it makes the use of that money more efficient and more relevant to today's modern age. So whether that be the construction of new ranges, the maintenance of new ranges, you know, we realize that people here at the SHOT Show and in our communities, they got to have a place to shoot. And if we can use those dollars to help enhance our shooting range infrastructure, it's a win-win. Because even if you're on a shooting range firing a cartridge or, you know, holding a rifle, that money still goes into the Conservation Trust Fund. Whether you're hunting or at a shooting range, it all goes into the conservation model. So the more shooting, the better for wildlife and conservation.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that manufacturers of firearms and ammunition products pay a federal excise tax of 11% for long guns and ammunition, and that's 11% right off the bottom line, and 10% for handguns. And that's been the case since 1937, when the excise tax was applied and put to that purpose, and it's raised about $13 billion for conservation. As you say, it's collected by the Treasury Department, Tax and Trade Bureau, and then distributed back out to the states based on a statutory formula, and it's the primary source of wildlife conservation funding in the United States, along with hunting license sales.
Yep.
But people don't realize how much the industry contributes. Can you imagine, if your bottom line was increased by 11%?
Well, I will tell you, we are happy and proud and privileged to pay into that Conservation Trust Fund.
Right, and it's doing wonderful things. Wildlife populations are thriving in the United States and paid for in large measure by the excise tax.
Absolutely.
So it's really good. So the money has always been allowed to be used for wildlife conservation. But what people don't know is it's also used to fund hunter education, and it's always been allowed to be used for building and shooting ranges. But the bill changes that formula and makes it a little bit easier. Can you explain how exactly the bill changes that formula and how that's beneficial?
Yeah, the system of conservation funding is built on partnerships with the manufacturers, partnerships with the states, partnerships with many nonprofit organizations. And what this bill does is it makes it easier for the states, the nonprofits, and the manufacturers to get the matching monies that the federal government requires in order to complete a project. So in this instance, what we're able to do is put more PR dollars up to back a project. And so that gives us more certainty for all these other players and partners to get in on an investment.
And it's extended the time period that they can use, those funds are available, those PR dollars are available.
Absolutely.
For the programs. And so it used to be that they had to put up, a state would have to put up 25%. and can only use 75% of the cost from Pittman Robertson. Now, they only have to put up 10%, and 90% can come from Pittman Robertson dollars. And what the states had told us is, because we used to say, you're not spending enough money building new ranges or enhancing existing ranges, and they always told us that the problem was the formula was too restrictive for them. So that's what the bill did. It didn't change the tax. It didn't apply it to new products. It just changed the formula, and it took a long time to get done, right? I mean, many, many years, unfortunately, but that's kind of the way of Washington, right?
Yeah, and I'll say, the bill was passed in this current session, but this bill's success started 10 years ago.
Right.
When the National Shooting Sports Foundation established their first political action committee, that's when the real, true legwork began.
Yeah.
Now, in Washington, D.C., there is an old saying, you're either on the menu or you're at the table.
That's right.
And the NSSF decided we're going to be at the table. We're no longer just going to be on the menu.
Right.
And so that decision 10 years ago to build a PAC and to give the industry a voice in Washington, D.C. allowed for this bill to become law.
Yeah.
Because these things don't happen overnight. It's a long education process. We talked to a lot of supporters about why this bill was important, but the reason it passed is we talked to people who traditionally don't care about shooting ranges,
right,
or don't support shooting ranges. But because of the net we're able to cast as an industry, because we banded together, we could actually reach those voices, right, who historically wouldn't be voting with us. They voted with us. This was a bipartisan bill. We had Republicans and Democrats supporting it. And that's a credit to the NSSF's lobbying campaign to get the message out, to spread the word, and to participate in the process.
Well, it's always a team effort, and Vista was a great partner in this all along the entire process. We're finally glad we got it done. It took longer than we would have liked, in part because it wasn't controversial, right? And it got wrapped up with other legislation that became more contentious, and so it took longer than we would have liked. But people say, well, I'm a shooter, I don't hunt, why do I care? But so part of the argument was always, it's important to create more shooting range opportunities, and that's where people go in to sight in their rifles or the shotgun for the hunting season. But everyone who's just a target shooter and never goes afield, they're helping to fund conservation too. The excise tax applies to that ammunition, to those firearms, and by far more ammunition and guns are sold and used for target shooting than for hunting. And so we've always argued that, shooters deserve a return on their investment as well. They're helping to fund conservation. The cost of the tax is reflected in the price of those products, and a rising tide floats all boats. If you have more ranges, there's more places for people to go and shoot, and that actually generates more money for conservation. And so it's a good investment for the industry, for the state fish and game agencies, because it will result in more money flowing back to the states in excise tax dollars.
Absolutely. I think another benefit is, in the R3 community, recruiting, retention, and reactivation. Now, how do we get more people hunting? Access is always one of those key barriers to entry. Sometimes that's land access, but in many instances, it's just access to the skills and the training that comes with, how do you handle a firearm? What's the best practices for when I'm out in the field? There's no better place than a shooting range than to learn those best practices, the do's, the don'ts, safe handling.
Safety skills, absolutely. Hunter education courses, sighting in your rifle, or just going out with your friends and family to enjoy the shooting sports. And again, recreational shooting is really on the rise, particularly among women. Big increases, I'm sure you know. And so this is, places for people to enjoy the shooting sports.
Absolutely.
And again, it helps fund conservation. And hopefully some of those people that try shooting will also try hunting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what else is Vista working on these days that we can talk about?
Yeah, so Vista Outdoor we're a diverse company. We operate in the shooting sports space. We operate in outdoor recreation markets. We've got bicycle helmet companies. We've got Camelback, which does hydration packs. So our hands are in a lot of different pots right now. As far as some of our priorities, there's a legislation, Restore Our Parks Act, which is looking at the maintenance backlog at the National Park Service. That may not apply to the hunting community per se, but if you take a straw straw poll of anybody walking around this show, a lot of people love getting outdoors, whether it's with their families, on a hike, a bike trip, what have you. So, a lot of our focus is on getting people outdoors.
Right.
So if that's hunting, if it's on a, family hiking trip, if it's touring a park, another focus area of ours are veterans. And many of the products that we make are used by our military and law enforcement while they're in the field. But us as a company, when those people come back home, when their service ends, we want to also serve them. And so if that's, sponsoring different outdoor hunts that gets veterans into the outdoors, reconnect with nature, spend time with their colleagues and friends in a setting where they can feel comfortable and at peace, we want to do that.
Right.
If it's supporting legislation that is going to prioritize how do we work with our federal land management agencies, which collectively control 660 million acres of land. How can we have those agencies work with the Veterans Affairs Administration? Because that's a match made in heaven. If we can get more veterans outdoors using our federal infrastructure, that's a win-win outcome. And for us as a company, that's right up the alley of who we are and what's in our DNA.
Right. Well, Vista's a great partner. And we're proud to have you as a member of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Well, that looks like we're out of time for right now. I want to thank Fred for coming by. It's good to see you again.
I appreciate that.
Have a great shot show.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.